Welcome back to the Burros of Berea. I am Rick Welch, and I have a very special guest today. Here's what I'm going to do first, though. I'm gonna show you how I found out about this gentleman, and then I'm going to introduce him. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen just so you guys can see because it was shocking to me. So here's the shared screen here, and if you look at it, this is the title of a book that's on Walmart.com, and it is Full Preterism, Ignored but Fulfilled: How the Church Missed the End of the World by William John Rankin Taylor. Now I'm going to stop sharing and I'll come back and I'm going to introduce you to William John Rankin Taylor, or as known on YouTube as Willie T. Hello, Will.
Hello, Rick. It's a real pleasure to be here. And I just want to say it is a awesome surprise to see that my book is on sale in Walmart. As you can
You didn't
hear,
even know it.
I didn't even know. And as you can hear from my accent, I'm not American, so it's an even bigger surprise. But my publisher's based in Oregon, and trying to find a publisher for a book on full preterism, that was a challenge in itself.
I
So I had
guarantee
to
it.
yeah, I had to shop around, but fair play to the folks at Whip and Stock. They gave it a chance, and apparently it's on Walmart now. Great.
The thing that I would have done for my client is I would have called them and said, guess what? We got you on Walmart.com. Now, I was just doing some searching around on full preterism books, and that one came up. And I pulled it up and I was like, this is on Walmart.com. Who is this William John Rankin Taylor? And so I got to looking around and I found out that, and I didn't put two and two together because I'd known that Tim Martin Beyond Creation Science had interviewed you as Willie T and was talking about things and then mentioned your book. And
Mhm.
I looked and I saw that your book was there. And I was like, wait a minute, this is the same guy. And I was like, wow. And so I asked him if he could make the introduction. So thank you, Tim Martin, for doing that. Um, and thank you for being willing to take some time out. You're in Scotland, so you're way ahead of me. What time is it where you are?
Gosh, yeah, we're approaching 10 o'clock in the evening here,
Oh,
but
that's
it's
late
fine.
for you. I'm so
Ah,
sorry.
no, no, I'm a night owl. I'm a night owl. This is me in my prime hours.
Yeah. All right. So one of the things that I want to do before we get into your book is I know that Tim introduced you to people, but I want to introduce you to our audience that listen to the Burros of Berea. And not all of them are full preterists. The Burros of Berea in its inception was an idea based on being able to talk to people by reading the scriptures and bringing, as laymen, the best we could to understand them. And the group was made up of people from different walks within the Christian faith, as well as an atheist named Andy Bishop. And Andy, he's still an atheist to this day, but he was with us in the studio for 5 years. And we talked about a lot of different things, throughout. But one of my favorite things to do was to do testimony episodes because I love to hear how people come into the faith. And I discovered over a long time that a lot of us are very similar. We all come into the faith, not necessarily from a full preterist paradigm, but we come into it a lot of times through premillennial or the majority, which was dispensationalism. And then we worked our way through it and we've all, but that was one of my favorite things to do. So, Will, would you mind? There's a question that I ask everybody, the same question, and I want to ask this to you. Can you tell me, to the best of your ability, the earliest memory of when you heard the name Jesus Christ?
Certainly, it's oh, well, I was probably in church. I was probably in church, and I was probably around. My earliest memory would be around probably 6 or 7, just
Hmm.
hearing the name, sitting in those church pews, and I'll admit at the time, wasn't all that invested in what was being said, but certainly I remember the minister giving the sermon and hearing that name.
Yeah. So tell me, were your parents Christian and that's how you ended up in church, or how did
This
that
is it.
work?
Yeah, this is it. So my exposure was from my parents. Now, not the most piously religious people in the world, but even in Scotland, where things are quite secular, you don't need to be so pious and religious. If you just have a fleeting interest in Christianity in modern Scotland, you're an oddity, right? You're an oddity because Christian expression, it's decreasing in popularity would be how to say it. Churches are closing. The one at the end of my street, that church is almost 800 years old, and the gates closed as I grew up in this town. And fortunately, the community has now purchased that church, and I hope to see some kind of revival from it. But that was my exposure through my parents, and
Hmm.
and really that did shape me, because I would say I became alive in my faith tragically when my father died in 2008. He was in his late 50s, and he always sort of prophetically said, I'll not live to see 60, because he'd lived an unhealthy lifestyle. But I didn't think it would come true. Unfortunately, it did. But that awakened something in me, because I thought, right, my father's dead. I have lost direction. I don't know where to go now as an adult. You know, I was approaching 20 years old. I didn't know where to go with my faith. I didn't even know if I believed. I didn't ask. I had never probed that question. I nominally went to church. I sat in pews because that's what I did. And then suddenly I had to think, right, my dad's dead. What does that mean? Am I ever going to see him again? And so I started looking for the truth. And that was such a pure and desperate bid for the truth. There wasn't a doctrine guarding me. I mean, there was a loose association with a Presbyterian Church of Scotland, a Protestant tradition, but it didn't really hold me. There was nothing there. The people that I spoke to there said the same things that I said, such as, I just come here because my parents came here, which is, hey, there's nothing wrong with that kind of continuity, but I wanted depth. I was looking for meaning. And
Yeah.
so I hope that comes across. You can hear the passion, because that's what I was looking for. I wanted to know, right? I don't understand how people can go just through the 9 to 5 and never contemplate. I'm sure everyone does, but with the volume that I think is necessary, it's not done. People are not contemplating the big questions enough, which, I think if you do, the implications are incredible. So there's my
Yeah.
fire.
So yeah, and I can hear it and I appreciate it. So you said 2008. So how old were you when that took place?
So I was 19 years old, going on 20. I'd be 20 in December 2008. And yeah, it pulled the rug out from me.
Mm. So yeah, and I can imagine that's one thing that that I experienced a lot in the year of 2025
Mm.
was we had 12 deaths that we went through, and this was
Oh,
been yeah, it's been a year of absolute grief.
yeah, sorry to hear that.
Oh, thank you. But honestly, it caused me just to dig deeper into my faith and into the scriptures and into my prayer life. Like it definitely did. So I can understand that aspect of
Mhm.
death being that catalyst for the
Yes.
shift. And so when you said came alive, you were looking for the truth. Now, can you explain to me a little bit more about that? So by saying came alive, like did you have like was this a conversion or are you saying like for yourself you came alive to the digging for it, but did you have like an encounter with God, like a moment of conversion, let's say?
I believe that was a moment of conversion. Sure, I was baptized into a church in infancy, but as an adult, I had never really taken that step of faith. I didn't even know what faith meant. I couldn't put it into any kind of solid terms. And then I once heard this example. It's like putting your weight on something. It's like going up to the top of the Burj Khalifa building or some big tower, the Empire State, and there's usually a glass panel you can step on and look down and see the traffic.
Hmm.
And it's like that worked for me. That's what faith is. It's believing that glass panel is going to hold my weight. And it's like I'd never done that with God before. I didn't know if I trusted God. I didn't know who God was. I had panic attacks wondering, what if God's actually not got my best interests in mind? Right?
Yeah,
What
right.
if God doesn't like me? And I was freaking out about these kinds of things. Big existential crisis.
Right.
But I worked through it, and I thought I had all these questions like, is there a God? What's the nature of God? I started to pray to God in earnest, hoping to relate to a person. And I did. Like I started to, I don't know, I just started to believe. I started to feel. I started to love. My disposition changed. As soon as I started to understand through reading the scriptures the character of God is exemplified in Christ, I was like, right, there's hope here. There's something hopeful here. And then I listened to people speaking, preachers on YouTube. What a great resource that was, you know.
Hmm.
But that's what we're doing right now, what you're doing now. This helped me as a 20, as a, you know, going on 20 years old without a father. It gave me guidance because it's like, right, these are reasonable people who have been willing to have some kind of humility to ask these questions about the nature of existence, and whether we're just adrift in space and nobody cares, or whether there's some kind of reason behind it, some kind of love, some, you know, something potent behind it. And yeah, I started to develop a database of information, but also a practice of prayer, a practice of contemplation. And that led to some incredible experiences, you know, like incredible encounters with God, where I had a strong sense that God was kind of, you know, directing me in ways. Like I had these terrible, terrible thoughts about eternal conscious torment and what that would mean for deceased loved ones and what that could mean for me. And it's that idea of living under a trap door that, hey, one day that'll open and you're falling to hell. And I was like, whoa, really? And then I remember all this anxiety in my head. And I tell this example, it's a bit abstract, it's a bit out there, right? But in terms of an encounter with God, this is what happened. And you can chalk it up to sleep deprivation, sleep paralysis, whatever you want. Sure, let's be skeptical, right? But I went to bed that night and I closed my eyes and I had a dream, and I was on this frozen lake and I was looking up to the heavens and contemplating how beautiful life can be, when all of a sudden fire started to rage up from under the ice. And I thought to myself, oh great, another nightmare. Fantastic. Just finish me off. But then something strange happened, right? Something strange happened. I became conscious. So I woke up, but my eyes didn't open. I woke up and I didn't hear an audible voice, but it was like someone thought a complete loud thought into my own head that said, not the danger of justice. A very peculiar phrase, not the danger of justice. And then I opened my eyes and I couldn't quite move my body at that point. And I felt all this sort of like scintillating energy kind of pouring down, like little sparkles pouring down my body. Very weird, right? And I'm open to people just saying, right, that was obviously just stress induced, or that was sleep paralysis or whatever. But it moved me. It was like, whoa, could that have been an encounter with God? I've got a choice. Right. As a skeptic, I could say, well, of course not. That's nonsense. I assume that all there is materialism in the world, and that's what I'm going to let lead me. Or I'm open to something else. And I think there's a possibility that
Mm.
God tried to communicate to me through that experience. And so it was things like that, right? Not too many things that were sensational like that, but just little chances, like you look at coincidence differently. Right. So that was the expression of faith. I looked at the world, instead of it being a big cosmic accident where I should be like ridden with anxiety and be on guard 24/7. I believe there was purpose at the core of existence. Wow. I mean, what a change in perspective. So,
Absolutely.
you
That's
know
a
what I
big
mean?
change. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you so obviously these changes, these experiences that now that you're having, with God, you are beginning, I assume, you're beginning to look into the scriptures more. Is that correct? Like you began to
Yeah.
that became a well that you began to dip the proverbial dipper in.
Oh, absolutely. And I'll say it was terrifying. Like
Mm.
I started reading the Old Testament and I was like, what the? They never shared this. They never told me this. Like I'm reading accounts where it's like it says, and a story about Moses, how God moved to kill Moses, but then his wife circumcised him really quickly and God changed his mind. I was like, wait, what are you talking about? God tried something? As if God would have any kind of resistance through human action. But then I started to realize, right, these are stories that are trying to communicate some kind of truth to me. Let's be, less hysterical about this. But it was shocking to read some of these stories. And I was like, whoa, I've never been here before. This has been hidden from me, which is such an important point. When you look back at church history, when you think of William Tyndale, who was executed right? For translating the scriptures into English. It's like,
Yeah.
wow, you know, what I mean, this kind of gatekeeping that went on. So I was able to immerse myself and look through the Old Testament and then get into the New Testament, which I was so hungry to read. I was so looking forward to it. Um, and then I got there and I was like, whoa, oh my goodness, wow. Like I was just so impressed by what I was reading about what Jesus was bringing into this world. And I was like, this is incredible. Like this person is so insightful. I love that he's challenging hypocrisy. I mean, my goodness, we look around us in the world today, we see such hypocrisy, and there's hypocrisy in our own hearts too. We've got to be sensitive to that as well. But it's just like, wow, this guy has something special here. And you know, he lives this life, and you know, he's ultimately killed, and but then not. He's coming back, and he's got this really hopeful, uplifting message. And so, yeah, I was really taken in by Jesus. But here's the thing: I started to read the words of Jesus that didn't seem to cohere to the reality of the church, right? So Jesus would say something like in Matthew 16, 26 to 28, he would say, "For what profit is it to a man if he gain the whole world and loses his own soul? Or will a man give what will a man give in exchange for his soul? For the Son of Man will come in the glory of his Father with his angels, and then he will reward each according to his works. Assuredly, I say to you, there are some standing here who shall not taste death till they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom." And it's like, well, look at the context there, that he's coming with his angels to reward people, and that's happening where it says here, there's people who shall not taste death till the Son of Man comes in his kingdom. So I would start to see things like that. And I'd be like,
Hmm.
oh, okay. I tried not to notice it. I tried to think, well, I'm sure the church has metabolized this and can make sense of it in a way that retains the tradition, right? We're looking forward to the return of Christ. But in my investigation, I would come across certain other thinkers who were just so persuasive in what they were saying, such as Don Preston, Mike Miano, and a couple others. Those were like the first introductions to full preterism that I had, and I was like, oh, okay. But this wasn't too problematic for me. I live in Scotland. Scotland's a very secular country. If I say I believe in Jesus in Scotland, people look at you weird. That's the weird thing.
Yeah.
It's not full preterism. They wouldn't know what full preterism was. If I said I'm a full preterist here, people are like, oh, are you on a register? Do you need to go and chap doors? It's like, no, it's not that. It's not. So, yeah, that was that, you know, I don't have the fear of loss of reputation or loss of relationship, but I understand, you know, and when it comes to the Western world and Christendom, Ireland and America, Christianity still has a very strong hold on those countries. And, you know, if you challenge full preterism in the state, sorry, if you challenge eschatology in the States, you can find yourself in a lot of trouble, right?
Mhm.
That's a testimony that a lot of people have. Um, I don't know if that's the same in like New York or California. It might be a bit more, you know, metropolitan, whatever. But if you're in the heartlands, it's like, you know, you're going to come up against some grief.
Mhm.
And that can be very difficult to navigate. But again, that's a kind of loss too. Talking about the loss of my father, it's a loss for people to challenge this stuff. It's so hard. I think that's why it's unspoken. It's unspeakable, right?
Mhm.
Like the loss of a loved one or the loss of your belief system. That is so integral to someone's identity. What a thing to do. You don't do that lightly. But the fact of the matter is you need to be moved because ultimately the most important thing is the truth. You know,
Mhm.
that's so important, right? It's the Berean way, and I'm pulled towards it. I'm magnetized by that.
So do you, I'm going to try to keep this just in the time frame here.
Certainly.
So when you were reading, like you said, you read the Old Testament and then you went into the New Testament and you were just hungry for it, looking forward to it. You saw the differences that the Christ and the way he interacted with the world, what he was bringing to the world. But you then said you started noticing these, like Matthew 16:26 to 28, or other texts that were dealing with time. Was that pretty early on, or was that later? Like, had you been studying the Bible for a while, or did that come as an outside introduction, or what? I mean, obviously you read it, but I'm just saying, Like, how did that, because that it came into my life like in full force. Like when I first saw it, I was, what is this? Like, wait a minute. Um,
Yeah,
because
it was.
yeah.
It was quite quick, I think. Right. So my dad passes away in 2008, and I start reading the Bible, start getting into scripture, and I jump onto YouTube. This is the seminal thing. I jump onto YouTube and I start to communicate with a couple of different YouTubers, right? Just, we're just starting off on YouTube. We're just talking about the Bible and we've got different ideas on things, and that's part of the edge of this little community. And then I'm exposed to people who I respect and who start to ask these kinds of questions. And I think it was just within 3 or 4 years, this question came around of, you know, Matthew 24. When is this supposed to happen, right? When is this end supposed to happen? It happens within this generation. What's this thing that C.S. Lewis said was something of an embarrassment because it seemed like it was an incorrect prophecy? What is this? And so that's when all that stuff started to come up. Now, I'd always wondered, and I remember having this question. It's like one of these little questions you have as a little kind of Twilight Zone entertaining a notion. What if the world had already ended and we were too insensitive to know it? It's like a Twilight Zone episode where it's like, what if you're already in hell? Ha ha ha. And it's like, well,
Right.
you know what I mean? It's like, what if
Uh,
the world has already ended and we're just so insensitive to see it? So, yeah, that question really came to the front when I started speaking to this community. And yes, it turned out there was some good reasons to question eschatology as it's taught mainstream. So yeah, that really caught me up.
so did you have any type, like, I remember for myself that historic Christianity never really, like, they had an explanation, an eschatological explanation, and there were some differences, of course, right?
Hmm.
We can see premillennial and amillennial, postmillennial, throughout. But full preterism, I would say, really didn't, I don't even think it was introduced necessarily in the way in which some of us talk about it until I think it was in the 1400s or the 1500s by the Catholic Church doing a defense. I think it was Alcazar that did it. But did that ever concern you that, obviously you're in Scotland and so you're sort of a minority, but when you think
Hmm.
about in Christendom and how many people are in Christianity, you're not really a minority historically. So did that bother you at all? Like, or did it not?
Oh, certainly, certainly, right? Because you have this history, this cultural continuity, right, that's come from the first century through to the current day. And the force of direction has been on a future expectation of Christ's return. I mean, where is my humility, right? Where is my
Yeah.
humility? I'm going to step forward and say, actually, I think I got this sussed. Y'all are wrong. And it's like, well, I mean, you better come pretty loaded if you're going to make that kind of assertion. So that became a bit of research for me because I needed a good answer to that question. I think we all need to kind of search that out. And that was the subtitle of the book, right? Full preterism ignored or fulfilled, how the church missed the end of the world, because that's a big question. How is it possible that the church fumbled that? And so
Mm.
that led me down a rabbit hole of exploring, well, what happened to the leadership of the church in the first century? What did it mean when that temple was destroyed? Was there a power vacuum? And if there was, what moved into it? And what moved into it? Did that influence people in a certain way? And then that the consequent traditions perhaps pushes in a way that we lose our symbolic literacy and take things quite literally, and then end up so shifted and just downstream of where we should be on these things. And hey, I don't think it's an accident that this idea has arisen today in this information age. I find it peculiar that because I like to think there's a divine hand, the mandate of heaven controlling, or at least integrated into the earth, right? We see,
Sure. Yeah, you have
yeah,
to.
yeah, right. So it's like, why was God comfortable, from my perspective, to let an error hang in the air for so long? And it's like, well, the way I've wrestled with that is ultimately, I think what's important to God is the content of character. It's your disposition of heart. It's, are you producing the fruits of the spirit? And what you assent to intellectually only matters so far in that equation, right?
Right.
If you think God has a white beard and I think God has a brown beard, it doesn't matter, right? If we're both down, if we're both doing, we're bit in society, if we're loving within our sphere of influence, I think God will look upon us and think, these are my children, you know? So there's, the church certainly protects doctrine. The church thinks doctrine is so important, so much so that if you are a fruit producing, spirit led Christian, but you believe something that errs from the doctrine, then you will not be welcome in that church, or you will be seen as a bit suspect. I mean, I've walked into churches with company, and because of what they're wearing or how they look, there's been mutterings, and the ministers had to stand and say, I just want to make everyone aware that we welcome people here, you know, even
Right.
women, even people with tattoos and stuff. And it's like, well, look, if that's the kind of reaction the churches have, and then, we need to be sensitive to what this tradition of doctrine and this heavy ideology that I think shifts us away from the lightness of a worldview, right? Because I think ideology is constraining, and it hems you in, whereas the worldview perspective of a spirit-led Christian is a lot more accommodating, has a lot more flexibility. So yeah, when I look back at church history, I do see that the Hebraic leadership broke down, or just wasn't present post 70 AD, because all the names we start to see come out of that, the prominent ones, are shifting it in a Hellenistic direction. And that comes preloaded with a whole lot of assumptions that can sometimes be helpful. I don't want to sit here and criticize Hellenism, because, the Greek worldview was interesting and I think offers something, but it did shift. So, all you need to do is look at something like the Septuagint and some of the language, like something like Hades. Hades is not some neutral term. Hades has this idea of an afterlife with a moral sorting ground, and Tartarus, a place of punishment. But Sheol was very different. The Hebrew afterlife, Sheol, was morally neutral. It was a place that all the dead would go to. Now, the tradition would grow, but these concepts have difference, right? There's a difference within them. And you could say, well, that's inconsequential, but it's not. Even the term righteousness in the Greek has a different sense to it, right? It has a more forensic courtroom sense to it, where the Hebrew righteousness is more about fidelity, right? King
Mhm.
David. King David's a great example. Oh, there's a righteous man. There's a man after God's heart. David, King David,
Right.
who sent his best friend to die so he could steal his wife, and then went off in these murderous rages. And it's like, well, here's why. Because he would align himself, he would apologize, he would be repentant, and he would turn back to God. And you might think, well, but he screwed up. And it's like, yeah, he did screw up, but he did step up as well. And he did ultimately orientate himself back towards God, right? We today probably prize more a continuity of virtue, right? We want to see stability in virtue. But in the Hebraic mind, that wasn't so important. I mean, it was still kind of important, right? It's just psychologically, you don't want a maniac to be ruling over you. But at the same time, it's like, if you could just reorientate yourself, if you can do that repentant work, if you can show that you are part of the covenant, then you've gone a long ways, right? As it says, love covers a multitude of sins. If you can demonstrate that love, then there's something there. So it just goes to show that there is subtleties of difference that, if you go off a few degrees in the wrong direction and then extrapolate that over 1,000 years or 2,000 years, you can end up a little bit off. And I think the content if you look at it contextually, if you look at audience relevance, if you start reading these things with the question of, a hypothesis of, could this apply to the first century, and could these things be speaking of a covenant change rather than the end of recorded time, or some incredible show of Jesus returning to earth to take a throne in Jerusalem? If you ask that question and go in and read the scripture, I think it will tell you actually uh, that position is not supported. You know, I did a study on Samuel, and that was the original sort of. I'm not going. It's not the original sin of the Israelites, right? But it's part of that. Give us a king we can see mentality, right? Because they had Samuel the prophet, and they went to him and said, "We want a king we can see, like all the other kings," right? And God was like, "What? I'm not enough." And then Samuel was broken up about this. He's like, "God, I'm so sorry. They're asking for a king they can see." And God was like, "Look, you know, you don't have to apologize. It's not your sin. It's, I can see what's going on here in their hearts." And so they were given, uh, they were given Saul. And I feel like that's what we're doing today. We're like, give us a king we can see, like all the other kings who can rule over us from a throne. But we're told that it's the invisible things that are the most valuable, right? Those are the things that are incorruptible. And we have to be sensitive to that. The kingdom of God does not come with observation. I mean, these are clues in here. It's like, well, what does that mean? It doesn't come with observation. Does it mean that it eventually comes with observation? It's like, no, 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 no. That doesn't mean that. If it doesn't come with observation, we're speaking about something quite subtle, and it's going to require a bit of study. So that's, all that kind of stuff went into making YouTube videos, and then those YouTube videos really became the bedrock for this book.
Right. So I like how you put that. I like the way that you just said about the invisible qualities,
Mm,
because I agree, and I see that as well. And one of the things that I have found currently, that has been problematic is, much like I was telling you at the beginning of this interview, is that I have been in a tremendous amount of grief over the past, all of 2025. Actually, from September of 24, whenever we had Hurricane Helene that decimated our hometown area,
okay.
killed people that we know, people
Mm,
lost their homes, businesses. Everything was just, it was hard. I mean, we went without electricity for 18 days here. It
wow.
was, yeah, I mean, when you're living like that, I mean, it's actually, it was kind of fun. It was like a big camping trip, but there was also a lot of hard work. And
Of
then,
course.
like I said, over the course of 20, from 24 through 25, we had a lot of death in our family, friends. Um, and I just started asking myself, how does full preterism work practically? And that's something that I wanted to talk with you, because you seem to have a pretty good grasp on this. You obviously wrote a book, but when you look at audience relevance, for example, and let's
Mhm,
use Revelation 21 and 22. Let's talk about the end of the Bible, when we get to the very end of it and we hear what
mhm.
this new heaven and new earth is.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is not something that we are going to physically observe while we're in this body, this flesh body that we're in, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
But that does not mean that the reality of that kingdom isn't in effect. So I'll ask the question like this. This might be silly. I'm sorry. I'm working through some of these things, and so I wanted to
Mm,
see. And I haven't read your book, but I am absolute. And by the way, guys, if those of you who are listening or watching this on Patreon, I'm going to put a link to his book, and I want you all to go buy his book through Walmart.com. That's what I want. I think that's fantastic. Go buy the hardcover edition. Let's make his publisher incredibly happy so that he can, make some more, write some more books, and sell them through Walmart. All right. So, and I'm going to get some copies, and I will get some extra copies, guys, and then I'll offer them up on Patreon as a gift if you guys want to try to. It'll be a drawing, of course. But anyway, all right. Long
for
story
sure.
short, so in your everyday life, Will,
Mhm.
How would you define the way that you understand the kingdom of God and how you interact in reality? So you've got the wall of the city, and outside are the dogs and the sorcerers and the abominable and thing. Do you believe that we are still experiencing that state?
Um, so like you're saying, this invisible quality, it's like the realities of the kingdom and of the outside where the darkness is. I think these are things that we embody and they're lived experiences. And the work today is to try to integrate something that's so richly symbolic and somewhat abstract and bring it into our day-to-day experience and not lose the legitimacy of the sort of inspired word, right? Because that's the fear. If I make this too day to day, does it lose something? The reason I think we think like that now is the project of modernity, is the fruit of the Enlightenment. We have disenchanted this world, and when we disenchant this world, we take out the uh, the notion that God has acted in history, which again, that makes it really difficult to become a full preterist if you don't see the significance of God acting in history with the temple falling and the significance of that. But it means in the modern day, the reality of the kingdom can seem muted and inconsequential. But I do believe that is a ideological mist or fog that we're moving in, right? I mean, I live in a society where neighbor will scarce speak to neighbor. I live in a society where people can be quite quick to cruelty and aggression. And I think that when it poisons your heart, it's like some kind of chemical spill and it seeps into the water table. You know, Jesus talked about how well, James describes in his epistle how sin is something that takes fruit in our own heart. But Christ also points out that temptations can come by people, woe, woe to those who, work the temptation through whom temptation comes by. So it's like there is that element to it where we operate in spheres of influence. And I do believe that to embody the kingdom is to do I don't want to make it sound too trivial and simple, but it's to understand that your day has a series of choices in it, right? And the most important choices you make are in relationship to other human beings, right? I believe the relationship is so important. That's why we're here to relate to other human beings. And what we do so with limitation, and that limitation brings friction and tension. You will be tired, you will be stressed, there will be things in your day that that pull you towards the gnashing of teeth, right? And I've felt it in
Sure.
myself, right? I have treated people that I love mean, I've meanly in ways that I find despicable, right? Not so much these days, but I still have the potential to do it. I'm not above vice. That's a big problem if you think you're above it. It's like, fair play to you if you've worked on it, but I can still get a bit snippy sometimes and I don't like it. And it's like it's making the choice not to lean into that energy and
Mhm.
instead to bless people, bless those who curse you when you're driving and someone cuts you off in traffic. Hey, bless you, you must be on a rush. I mean, that's very difficult for a lot of people, but I think
Yes.
yeah, I think that's what God's trying to communicate to us. It's like, look, you have a choice. The kingdom is this beautiful light within you. You've seen what I've you know, given you. You've seen the sacrifice I'm willing to work through Jesus Christ. It's like, well, will you put weight? Remember when I spoke of the glass panel at the top of the Empire State Building or whatever it is? Are you willing to step onto that glass panel and believe that I'll support you? Like, you don't have to have the quick word. You don't have to rage. You don't have to be menacing. You don't have to posture in an aggressive way. There might be times in life where that's appropriate, but where you can show softness, where you can show love. I do believe, even though it feels trivial, even though it feels like, well, isn't that just being nice? I mean, does Christianity like own that then? It's like, well, no, and that's the point. Christianity doesn't own that. God does, right?
Right.
Christianity is a vehicle. It's not the destination, right? God has given us this inspired word to work good. And it's not that Christianity has the monopoly on the doing of good. You know, it's too tempting to get caught up in that. God is bigger than religion, you know, and anywhere you can demonstrate love, you have walked in the light of the kingdom. I think, you know, I don't know if that sits comfortably with a systematic theology, but it speaks to my experience. And I think the implication of something like full preterism is the confidence that we live in the victory, which I think is a difficult thing to actually come to terms with, because you need to reconstruct your relationship with God, reconstruct your relationship with the world. And that is a process, especially when you've been brought up thinking it's off in the future, it's distant, it's not going to touch you. Maybe your children's children will find, you know, themselves gazing at the skies as Christ comes down. It's like, no, no, that's the ultimate distraction. There's nothing in that for you. What you need to do is understand that Christ is alive, Christ has succeeded, God has won, and they reside in you. The creator of the universe has your back, you in particular, and wants you to succeed. And if you could internalize that message, what does that do to you emotionally? What does that do to you psychologically? Can you believe that? Like, can you
Right.
believe
That's
that?
good.
Right.
Yeah, that's good.
That's it. Yeah.
So, so let's try this. Let's say it this way, because you and I are kind of sounding up similar, I think here.
Mm,
So, for Old Covenant Israel, for example, when Jesus was walking the earth, he tells them that this is going to be this. He's going to take this kingdom from them and give it to another people or a nation that's going to produce its fruit, right? And so
mhm.
we know that historically that seems to be what is happening here in 80 70 whenever Jerusalem and its temple and its religious leaders and all of that, including their king and everybody, it's done. It's done away
Yeah.
with. It's over. And so, but yet you still have this glorious group of people carrying the message of the gospel into the world and throughout and spreading that light, and it's bearing fruit. Now, the fruit, I think about the Apostle Paul in Galatians 5, a song that we sang as kids. The fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness,
Yes.
goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. These are the works of the Spirit. So that fruit that nation is producing is really, it derives it from the Spirit of God, is where it comes from. And so these are the things that I try to observe. Okay, I'm not looking for. There was a gentleman who said, "I'm not looking for a hole in the ground. I'm looking for a hole in the sky," which is what what people would say in the rapture world.
Oh,
But
yeah.
by saying the kingdom does not come with observation, we also being physical, I'm looking for those types of fruit being born into the world by those who are tapped into the spirit. So I'm still seeing a physicality of it, but it's the kingdom itself that's from within. The kingdom is from within, but its outer working is for the world. And so if you say, for example, I always tell everybody, trees do not eat their own fruit. Okay, they
Mhm.
just don't. Trees bear fruit, and the fruit is for the the entity that's going to come by and pick it, and so I can eat it and then gain its sustenance.
Yeah.
So the fruit of the spirit that is bear, that we are the branches, and he is, he's the vine, we are the branches, and apart from him we can do nothing. But with him we can bear much fruit, Jesus says in this, in this. So the the object lesson that I have here is that the fruit that you bear are for others. So, like you said, being
Mm.
kind to someone. My atheist friend Andy always said, when you're in traffic, he mentioned traffic. When you're in traffic and you're mad at somebody and you're just upset at traffic, just remember that you are traffic
Yes.
because you're in the traffic as well. So you're a part of the traffic. But So that's how I try to define the experience of a fulfilled kingdom is that you're going to see the fruit and that the fruit is for the world and that world when it takes it we also are inviting them. That has been the experience as a Christian. I had someone that came to me that shared the gospel with me and told me about Jesus Christ and what he did in time 2000 years ago and that what he did was so critical to all of mankind that those who would put their trust in him that his righteousness would be imputed to me and therefore I could stand before God. And that is something, and I believed it. I believed that message. And when I believed that and I adopted that, or I was adopted by it, my life began to change. And I started hearing things warring with me internally, with my,
Mm,
what we call the flesh, or maybe you don't call it that anymore, but my own internal thought processes were being challenged by the words of Jesus and it wasn't just what I was reading in the scripture. It was actually happening internally. Yes, I read things in the scripture. Yes, I learned them and adopted them. However, there were certain things that I was learning by the Spirit that I was not necessarily reading verbatim in the Word. Are you picking up what I'm laying down here?
100%. Yeah,
Okay.
100%.
Okay. So that's where when I talk to, I've debated atheists. I've spoke with people for years about my faith. And one of those things that I say is I look at my actual experience and they're, whoa, stop. You can't go with experience. You can't.
Mm,
But I say, well, wait a minute. Because if the Apostle Paul tells me um, the works of the flesh are this, and the works of the spirit are this, and that the spirit is at war with those works of the flesh. And I can say, yes, I recognize that internally. Would you say the same for yourself, that the spirit wrestles with the things of your flesh? Do you experience that?
100%. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. And then it's like you have this little moment where you are choosing to operate by the Spirit versus choosing to operate by my own flesh, my own ideas, my own thought, right? I'm making the choice to follow what the Spirit is telling me to do. Well, when that happens, that fruit is coming out. Now I'm bearing that fruit, and most likely it's for someone else. So if I'm talking to somebody that is vehemently opposed to me and they're incredibly angry with me, and I feel this welling up of this love and for them, and I can see their anger and I understand it. And they say something harsh about me, and I remember Jesus's word, speak well of them that
Mm,
speak harm to you or speak evil of you. And I say, I hear you. And then I speak it and I say, I get why you're there. I really do care. I care about what you say. I get it. And I care about you. And I can see why you're like, trying to work with that. And some people don't know what to do with that, and I get it. I get it. So,
yeah.
so is Jesus, I guess the reason I'm bringing this up to you is because that is really that's where my interest lies at the moment, big time, is what, in effect, some people within full preterism look at it through a corporate body. Some people look at it as an immoral body of death or the IBV view and all that. I'm curious where you land on that. I see it as a corporate, but a corporate is made up of a bunch of individuals.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, just listening to you there, I just found myself in complete agreement. I believe that, and to speak of the significance of your experience, of your personal experience, and the fact of the matter is, truth is not by consensus. Okay, if the whole group agrees that the sky is green, that doesn't make that true, right? It's truth is not by consensus. Truth
Right.
is very much truth. And if you
Yes.
can align yourself with the truth, then yes, your lived experience has a certain I mean, it's in line with the spirit of God more so than someone who would challenge you and say, "Oh, you've done the thing wrong. You went to church on Sunday and instead of Saturday, therefore." And it's like, no, I can't be doing with that anymore. I've grown past that. I'm not going to be hemmed in by some ritualistic practice that has zero application to love. In fact, it restricts love. It's like if I feel inspired to do good and to produce that fruit, It's like, I am going to do it and I'm going to do it vigorously and I'm not going to be stopped because I've transgressed some bullet point on a doctrine. It's like, what is wrong with you? You know what I mean?
Right.
But, you know, at the same time, it's like, yeah, that disposition you're talking about when the other approaches you with a spirit of aggression and then knowing that you too are, you know, you too are a human being. You experience adrenaline, you experience cortisol, your blood pressure rises, and it's like, right, I get that too. Right, I've got a choice here now. I can get in their face, or I understand, like you're saying, I understand where you're coming from. I can see, I can stand shoulder to shoulder with you and see how your experience has led you to see it that way. And I think to grow in the kingdom is to learn that art. And it is an art because at first it can sound performative, right? If someone says that they can somehow empathize with my experience, I might be skeptical at first. But I think if you stay the ground, if you stand your ground and you say, look, no, I've lived an experience, I've been touched by tragedy, I understand dignity, I understand these things. I might not have your exact experience, but I can empathize with you. And then just if you meet them that way, I find you surprise them. Like you said, they don't know what to do with it because they've been in a fight their whole lives. They're fighting for their existence. They're fighting for their truth. And then suddenly, if you can approach them with a bit of energy that's not fight, if you can, as Christ would, approach someone with grace and truth, then I think you move people. Then the conversation changes. Look, we're in the age of social media, and all you need to do is scroll through Twitter in an afternoon, and you're like, whoa, people are saying some stuff to each other. And I mean, it's just
Yes.
like, yeah, it's so loud and it's so tense. And by goodness, sometimes I'm like, tag me in, tag me in. I want to say, I want to hit someone with a steel chair. It's like,
Right.
you know what I mean? It's so tempting. But there is the temptation, and it's like, right, I need to pause, reel it in, and think, right, what is a good practical way to move here? And sometimes it's just not the space to move in, right? Sometimes if I
Mhm.
mean, if you are in the outer darkness with a gnashing of teeth and you think, I'm going to put on the most beautiful sermon here that's going to change the darkness to light, it's like you will stand out perhaps as a luminary, but if you stand in the darkness, you will be a star in the night sky. It's like there needs to be people receptive to you. Sure, be the flare, shoot yourself up in the air and see who will turn their faces towards you. But I wouldn't think that, you're going to change every heart just through your presence, because then I think you're setting yourself up for heartache. As Jesus would say, those with ears to hear, but trust that there are those with ears to hear, right? I mean, that's ultimately what it is. Find the balance. I mean, don't exhaust yourself, but understand that God is using us to create as a collective this constellation. It is like a constellation. Like if you could look at the globe of the earth, you would see all these lights of the kingdom igniting. And it's like, right, we're just trying to reach, I think in some way, I think we're trying to reach critical mass. We're just trying to reach a minority that turns into a majority that can just push the world in a slightly more godly direction, whatever that is, right? Because I understand there's heavy political structural issues in the earth. But I think if you guided the human heart with the Spirit of God, then a lot of that stuff could find its resolution. Very idealistic, very optimistic, but I do think God ultimately has a plan. And if we can just align ourselves with that spirit, good things will happen. They happen on the micro level, right? I've enjoyed such beautiful gifts and beautiful charity from Christians just in the last year through sharing a testimony, through engaging with people. I get beautiful cards, I get just treated with such respect, and I'm sustained by it. And I think, whoa, this is so nice. It's so
Yeah,
nice to
sure.
be on the receiving end. And I think, I want to continue to give of this too. So, yeah, like you say, I think I agree completely with what you've just pitched.
So I only have a few more minutes left with you, and then I do want to talk about your book a little bit.
Mhm.
I would like to know. So obviously, there's a lot of full preterist books, not many that are published by a publisher and selling at Walmart, but there's a lot of self-published books, a lot of works that have been put out, crowdfunded, helped, things like that. But and I'm sure you've probably read some of them, I assume. But what would you say? to the full preterist first that sets your book apart, perhaps, from maybe some of the other ones that are out there?
Cool. Right, you're in the business of knives, right? You
I
make a
am.
you make a good knife. There we
Yeah.
go. Well,
I
this is
hope it's good. I mean, it's a good knife. Yeah, I'm going to say. Matter of fact, let me show it to you. I've
all right.
got
Let's
it.
go. Let's go.
I've
Let's
got it
go.
right here. So this is, I've got all four versions. So this is one of the knives that I make. This is called the slip joint. It is a titanium
Nice.
handle with a magna cut stainless steel. It's very, very sleek. And it's under $200 to be titanium and stainless steel hardened at 64 Rockwell. It does really well on the American market. I have more, obviously, just different types of designs on the outside. But yes, I make my own particular knife and I want it to be good.
Well, I am in the exact same business. This is my knife. I'll tell you.
There's your knife.
I'll tell you, and it's a bit of a Swiss Army knife. I'll say that much as well, because I feel like it does three things that I would want a book to do, right? It's not overly verbose, but it has a narrative. And I think human beings, we are storytelling creatures, right? We love the story of the incarnation, that God, it's all through language. So I wanted the story to be persuasive and to have a certain awe to it, right? But I also want it to be technically sound, and I want it to have persuasive arguments that are just by the numbers, boom, 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 here's the point. And then I also wanted to have this optimistic edge where it's like, right, what do we do? What are the next steps? Therefore, I produced a book with three sections. One is the historical and theological foundations that are there for full preterism. I trace the story from the day that temple fell to the modern day, and I try to persuade people, look, this is how the church missed this, right? This is where it missed it. This is where it kind of got it right, but that position just didn't become that dominant and it went off in this other way. And then we go through straight through to the modern era and we trace the sort of epistemological underpinnings, right? The way that knowledge is gathered and just how it was there, but it was never quite grasped. But hey, here we are in the modern age, and I think that happens, it's happened for a reason. The second section, this is the technical stuff of, right, what's the sound arguments here, like you've maybe had a question lingering in your head about, right, what does that scripture mean, or has anyone ever said spoke on this? I mean, I did a YouTube channel for 10 years on meditating on those kinds of questions. That's my section two. I wanted it to have as much of those juicy questions as we could possibly get into, a book of this size. And I think it has delivered. Someone's described it as having no fat. It's just all muscle and bone. So, I mean,
Good.
good for the barbecue. And in that last section again, it talks about, what we just discussed about the how do we expand the kingdom? What does it mean to move in transformation rather than just ideological compliance? It talks about the nature of sin and what it means today. It talks about the spiritual world, right? Some people want to know, is Satan still alive? Is there demons and things to contend with? And I go into all of that, because I think it's interesting. And sometimes the answers are not immediately clear, but to author something and to pitch that discussion and to host it, it's just, the book has so much in it. And it's just like, if I was to write a book, what book would I want? And it's like, well, this is it. It's like probably what you were asking too. If I'm going to design a blade, if I'm going to make a knife, what materials should it be made out of, right? What size should the blade be? What size should the handle be? What texture should the handle have? All these questions that you have to ask in the designing of a blade. It's like, that's what I'll put into this book. So it's basically, I wrote it to myself based on all the questions that have come over 10 years. I guess it's a book I would wish I could hand deliver myself 10 years ago and say, right, there you go. There's something to work with. Is it the ultimate text? Yes. No, look, no, there might be more scholarly minds, like a Don K. Preston will write, he'll write like 700-page books. I'm not writing a 700-page book, right? Actually, although I'm quite academic, I'm not a big reader. I want every word to count. Some people are vociferous readers and they just love a good word count. I wanted to write something that's what, just over 200 pages, so and just gets the point across. And I will say, the tone of the book was so important to me. You could hand this book to the most fierce critic of full preterism and it's gentle. I open this book by saying, look, I do not want to call anyone a heretic. I don't want to make an enemy of anyone. And I deliberately do not capitalize full preterism as a statement in this book because I want to have some kind of intellectual humility to say, look, I'm on a journey too. And while I believe these things to be correct, and I have to assert them as true because that's what I believe, and it's, I'm not going to say what I believe in the form of a doubt, but I'm open to questioning. I'm open to discussion. The spirit with which this book is written is so accommodating of those who don't see it this way. And I don't want to create friction. I want to create connection and unity. So that's what it's all about.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Now, the other thing I want to do is, if it's okay with you, I want to go up here to YouTube and I want to look for your channel. Can you tell me the name of your channel?
Sure. So it was Willie T. It's now exploring preterism with Willie T.
Okay. Exploring Preterism with Willie T. Preterism Explored with Willie T.
You know what? You know what? It's called Preterism Explored with Willie T.
Got it. So I'm going to go ahead and click into it and I'm going to hit subscribe right now. And then I'm
Oh well,
going
thank
to
you.
share the screen. So let me let me go here to share my screen. Sorry, guys, it's taking me a second. And those who are listening on podcast and can't see it, you'll have to come to Patreon to see it, guys, if you want to watch the video. And you can watch it absolutely free. You don't have to be a paid member on Patreon, guys. You can just come on, become a member, a free member, and then you can see it. All right, so we're going to share the screen here. So, Preterism Explored with Willie T. Scottish wit, spiritual sight, fulfilled prophecy, toward truth. The time has come, he said, Mark 1:15. All right, so here we see, if I go
If you click
into,
on videos, you'll get a good
yeah, so we've got several. Has Jesus retired? How the church missed the end of the world, the days of vengeance, Revelation's most revealing text is full. All right, awesome. And so, oh, wow, very good. You got some serious AI stuff going on in here. Um, Very good. Yeah. All right, guys. So you can see he's got stuff from 5 months ago. His hair was a lot shorter. And then, wow, look at you. Boy, you've done a lot. Very, very good. So, guys, Preterism Explored with Willie T, you will be able to find that also in the show notes. I'm going to put a link there. I'm going to put a link to the walmart.com so that you guys can go and buy the hardcover of Willie T's book and buy one or two or three. Will you? Buy several copies. Give them to your friends. Give them to the people that are both in full preterism or who are not. Like he said, he comes in gentle. That means a lot to me. I believe in gentleness and kindness and trying to be loving, even though we are bringing some truths that are very hard to understand. Now, we didn't get into it. I want to thank again Tim Martin for making this connection. Willie, I have to go watch that video. I apologize, Tim, for not seeing it yet. I apologize, Willie, for not seeing it, but I will. I promise. I will get into that and I will watch it. And I'm sure there were some things about covenant creation that were brought up that I'll be very interested to see you guys discuss.
Oh no, yeah, no, Tim's a wonderful man, and Rick, it's really lovely to have spent this time with you tonight. I really vibe with what you're doing here, and I think your voice is an important one in this space. So thank you.
Thank you, Will. I really appreciate that. So, William John Rankin Taylor,
Mhm.
the writer, the book. I'm going to give you guys the title again. The book is called "Full Preterism: Ignored but Fulfilled: How the Church Missed the End of the World." And guys, 264 page count. WIPF, WIPF, and Stock Publishers. He is a published author, and if you buy it, it's $47.39 at Walmart, and it ships, and it will be arriving May 17th if you buy it today. So that's quite a ways away. But so what? Let's do it. Let's show him some support. Well, Will, thank you so much for your time today. If you will, hang on, we'll end the recording, and I do want to chat with you as we go, but I know it's late where you are. You're a night owl, thankfully, and I appreciate you doing that.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Absolutely. All right, take care. And guys, we will talk to you guys again next time on the Birds of Berea. So peace out.